So, London Marathon have just released their good for age times, and I want to share why I think it's such a fantastic thing. Because you're hearing on social media and stuff, people going, "Oh my God, they're so difficult, and they're getting more difficult each year," which I don't disagree with. I shared with my son; he's 27, and he'd have to do 2:52. So I'm not saying they're not very challenging, but from the context of an older runner from 50 right through the age groups, what I think is amazing is how they're having to bring it down for those age groups. They're doing that because people are running it and they need to get a level where the level to entry is hard enough so they don't get too many people. So, for example, an age group that I'm really aware of because I just fell into this last year. When I was training in 2024 for Brighton Marathon, it was 3:45. And the week before I did Brighton Marathon 2024, they dropped it down to 3:37. And I did 3:31, which got me a good for age place for this year's London Marathon, which I'm doing in a couple of weeks. Now they've just dropped it down to 3:34. So since 2024, it's dropped down from 3:45 to 3:34. Now, from a qualification point of view, that's a pain. But what it tells me as a coach is, wow, when people are talking about age, obviously, as I bang on about, age is, of course, a reality. Getting older does change things. Anyone that tells you that's not true is either delusional or probably about 22. So aging is a reality. But the thing I really lean into with myself and my coaching is I can't change my birthday candles on my cake or yours. But what I can look at, there is a lot of things that you can adapt, you can change. First of all, the adaptations that you make. So as I often call them, the boom bust cycles, these can be micro or macro. And what I mean by that, these are like groundhog days where you're running with your ego quite often, and not meaning you're big headed, but you're running too hard quite often, or you're running the intensities of your speed workouts wrong. And that's what I call the support tripod being utilized. So what I mean, if you can imagine a tripod, on top of that is your running, but below it is the support. And a tripod's a pretty robust thing. And as long as you've got the three struts, if you haven't got those three struts, it's very unstable. For me, that is like recovery, things like sleep, diet, what you're eating. I'd also put into there rather unfashionably weight loss. If you're gaining a lot of weight, you'd prefer to carry less. And then obviously, I just thought I would change to this for you to show you. So yeah, the support tripod, you've got strength, training, recovery, and nutrition. But why I wanted to bring you onto this is also the inner game of running. So that self-awareness, that boom bust cycle, and then how you're pacing your training, how you're navigating your training plan will have a huge impact. So the training intensities, effort, and volume. And then you get all that, and a runner can be really ready. I learned this really early on as a coach. The race goes out the window. It's not like the runner isn't capable of running quicker. It's just that the execution isn't there. So you've got the race strategies and also race specific training and taper. I was talking to a runner the other day and he said, "How long's our taper?" And I'm like, "Well, we will work that out for you, how you're running and how things are going. If we're getting your training intensities, durations, and recoveries right, you won't need a massive, massive taper. You'll need a massive taper if you haven't navigated your training plan correctly, and then you're almost begging for the taper because you've worked too hard." This is a situation where runners haven't recognized the differences between training and racing. Training is building up capacity, and racing is showing what you've got. If you show what you've got too much in training, that impacts your actual race results. What I'm seeing is potential. Now, don't get me wrong. There may be some of you looking at that 50, 353 for a female, 307 for a man. Just based on where you're at, that is never going to happen. I get that. If I was this age, I wouldn't be looking at 252. But what I am saying is, if you are near that, if you are near good for age, or you think that is a potential, you should look at this as encouragement. There are loads of people out there your age that are improving to the point where it's pushing people like London Marathon to keep upping these age groups, which I see as encouraging, even if for whatever reasons it's unlikely to qualify for good for age. Then look at it another way. You can improve by 10%. You may end up being in the top 10% of your age group or near to that. This really is encouraging, as depressing as it might seem initially when somebody goes, oh, they brought the good for age down again. It makes it harder. Of course it does. And that is frustrating. But it also shows how much fitter from this 50 downwards age group, how much fitter older individuals are getting. They're having to push this more and more because of this. At 65 to 69, you're still looking at a man having to run a sub 4-hour marathon. That, to me, says that there is loads of people of that age running sub 4 marathons, which is really encouraging. It's challenging. There are runners out there now that could do all the things I shared here differently. They could look at avoiding the cycles that are repeating in their running so that they break those cycles. They could look at the perfect pacing method and not only have a good plan, but actually execute that plan well. They could look at their support tripod, their strength training, their recovery, their nutrition. They could have a better inner race game, pacing strategies, and more race-specific training at the right time so that they don't get caught in the race pace trap. And then to make sure that the taper was better. Imagine all those things. Maybe they're not going to get a good for age. There are going to be other factors involved, but wouldn't they make significant improvement? Yes, they would. Or a runner can go, well, it's just my age. And that's where I was at 50, 51, 52. Just thought it was all over. It was all done and dusted. That was it. And it was a friend of mine that actually said to me, a fellow runner, younger than me, about 20 years younger than me, just said, when was your peak, Lee? So I rattled off some times to him. And when he left the salon, it's really peed off because I'd never really stopped to think about it. I'd kind of given up. And hope is the thing that drives motivation in the end. Tangible, practical hope. And I started to look at things. I got a coach, Liam Butterworth, worked with him. And the rest is history. I mean, as I say, I qualified good for age last year, 331. My PB is 324 from 2011. I did a 60-mile ultra last year, celebrate my 60th birthday, finished first in my age group. And I'm going into London this year. I haven't planned to go in at my peak because I've got lots going on. My son's getting married in May and various other bits. I wanted to just kind of work into the year in a fairly, not casual way, but relaxed. I'm confident that all being well, I'll give a good showing myself. It's possible if you do the right thing. This is what I see about these good for age things. They are not as negative as some people make them. I just thought I'd share this. If you're interested in progressing more, in the link to this video somewhere, the information, I've got something called the Age Group Blueprint. It's basically my system that I've been talking about here. And it's a book and various other things that can help you get the very best from your running. If you're interested, why not check it out? It's only £4.95. All right. Bye for now.